Howdy chunky! Alex Belfield is back. He's back with a vengeance, but is he back on the grift? Let's talk about it. Welcome back to Playing in Politics. Wow, okay. This is the first episode I've done, I'm pretty sure, with like no notes, just straight from my brain, because I have so many thoughts, but I didn't want to like compartmentalize it down into the bullet points like I normally do. So today is going to be a little bit more chaotic. If you're new to this channel, by the way, hello. By the way, we hit 900 subscribers recently, which is insane. I just want to thank everyone who's subscribed to my channel regardless of what video you found me on. But yeah, welcome to kind of the main thing that we do over here, which is my podcast where I talk about politics and I do my makeup at the same time. It's like Belisarian but without the murder. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about Alex Belfield, who is out of prison now. He is finally out of prison after 2.9 years. Now, I've mentioned Alex Belfield on this channel before. I'll link any episodes of the podcast where I've talked about him. I can never remember which side it is. I think it's that side. And yeah, so we've talked about him a few times on this channel because I did used to be a fan of his, as I'm sure a lot of people who clicked on this video will have been. You know, he made his mark on the internet around sort of COVID times, especially like 2021 and obviously 2022 leading up to September, where he got jailed for stalking, and we're going to be talking about all of that mess in today's video. Because yeah, I've mentioned him this year, especially obviously knowing that he was going to get out. I was sort of like preempting what was maybe going to happen. I think I talked about him in my predictions video that I made at the beginning of the year, where I talked about like my predictions for politics and things like that. But yeah, Alex Belfield was somebody I did used to watch on a really quite regular basis. Him and Maya Tusi, starting with Maya, and then I think I found Alex through a supporter of Maya, through the first Discord server that Maya had back in 2021, which again I've talked about. There's a whole episode of the podcast where I talk about the whole timeline of mine and Maya's friendship and that whole era of my life. And as I say, I did mention Alex in there because I did discover him through that, and he was known for basically making people laugh. Like, he was adding a lot of hope and I think joy to a time that was very, very dark. And I think the main message that was coming across at the time where I started first watching him was he was very against the vaccines. He was very like, he was what one of the main sort of pillars in sort of be aware of the vaccines, like question everything about the vaccines and things like that. And he was very open about like vaccine deaths, and I think that really was what made people rally behind him, because I say he was one of the people who was really trying to bang that message home of like, don't trust everything you're seeing on the BBC and like the mainstream media. And I think he had a real impact for that. But talking about the BBC, I mean, obviously we know he used to be a presenter at Radio Leeds, and he was quite a significant figure at the BBC because he was really popular. People really liked his show. People really, you know, found it really entertaining and funny, and he just had a good energy. I mean, obviously he got sacked from the BBC, I think is what happened, and since then he just had a vendetta against the BBC. I mean, as a lot of people do, but not necessarily from a personal level, but obviously him being an ex-employee, personal vendetta, especially against people like Jeremy Vine, who of course no longer works for the BBC, but was somebody who, yeah, he despised in a big way. That, and obviously a lot of other people in the BBC, you know, he was quite big at trying to hammer the fact that it was corrupt. And even since coming out, and like Tarquin, I was gonna say his team, but it was like mainly Tarquin, the videos that were coming out this year, like leading up to his release, we're talking about obviously like the Hugh Edwards case and things like that, that were kind of confirming what Alex had been saying about the BBC the whole time. And it was quite interesting to see him talk about that. And I remember at the time, it was really the main person who really had me looking at the BBC in that sort of light of going, maybe they're not quite sort of the bastion of Great Britain and the, you know, the medium in this country that, you know, it's been hailed as. I mean, obviously it is quite significant for British media history, we can't really deny that, but especially recently it's just become this incredibly corrupt organisation. And obviously Alex, having that personal insight, having worked for them for so many years, was really starting to talk about it quite a lot. And I think that was the mix. Like, up until when he got jailed, he was emphasising more and more like his hatred towards the BBC, and again, a lot of it was valid, but I know personally, and I'm going to be interjecting a lot of like my personal opinions about like him getting sent to jail, that whole case and everything, because I was following it fairly closely at the time when he got jailed, like back in 2022, but I think when he actually got jailed, I'd sort of made up my mind a little bit about like, I don't know if I fully support this guy anymore, and we'll talk about this, but yeah, up until then, you know, that was something that he really started to emphasize, and it was the vaccines and hating the BBC was the two things that he was really starting to hammer home, and really starting to talk about like an awful lot, and it started to distract, I think, a little bit in a way from just kind of the light-hearted comedy content that he was making that kind of turned me onto his channel and had me being a fan of his. When I say, you know, he's a fan, obviously he's also known for doing his live shows, especially in 2021 and 2022. Actually, I think his live show started in 2020. No, it wasn't. It was like late 2021, because I actually saw what one of his Blackpool shows, like one of his solo ones, not one of the ones with Katie Hopkins, but I saw one of his shows. If you guys don't know, I'm like fairly local to Blackpool, so not to dox myself, but that was just obviously the most convenient one for me, and obviously he loves Blackpool, which I don't really know why, but he does. And it was a good time. It was a good time for the era that it was, and for what we were all trying to rally behind, especially when it came to COVID, and just wanted to have a bit of a laugh at like his impressions of the politicians who were relevant at the time and just the figures and things. And in his latest video, which we'll get to, you know, he kind of brings up a lot of those jokes again, and reminding people of, you know, who he is and like his humour and things, and some of it's not quite relevant now, and again we'll get to this when we talk about his latest video. But yeah, I remember actually having quite a good time at his show, and he was a funny guy, and you know, I really enjoyed it. And yeah, so overall it was pretty, it was a good time. It was a good time for kind of the new media sort of freedom loving movement is what I'll say. And again, yeah, he was just a good entertainer, and I feel like he was coming across quite grateful for this platform that he'd been given, especially with his supporters, you know, being so supportive, and the money that they were giving him obviously for the tickets for the shows and things, and coming to support him, and his independent platform as well, which we'll get to, because that's a big thing in this whole story. But yeah, it was a good time. And as much as, if you know me personally, if you've seen any of my content before, you know that time personally for me in my personal life wasn't the most positive, but in terms of media and the kind of things I was consuming, Alex was somebody who, yeah, was a provider of jokes and laughs, and I remember having inside jokes with my partner at the time, which, as I said, wasn't the most positive experience. But when it came to, you know, the jokes we had with it, because we both watched Alex, and it was like we just had the inside jokes, and the community I was in at the time as well, that it was just a good community. You felt like you were in it with the jokes and everything, and just that humour, which is something that we really needed, and something that I felt like we were missing during lockdown and just that whole period of time. So yeah, he was really just a good old school comedian entertainer that was just a really refreshing and comforting voice, I guess, at that time. But around, and I can't exactly remember the exact time date, but around that time, I think, especially in 2022, he started to say things like, oh, I need to, you know, YouTube as a platform is trying to cancel me, trying to silence me for everything that's going on, so I'm going to move over to a independent platform. And that's when AlexBelfield.com began, and it was an interesting time, it was an interesting era, and this does all link back to the present, by the way, but this was an interesting era because it wasn't just him who was doing this. Maya also had a phase of trying to sort of almost copy Alex, because they were sort of friends at the time, and I've talked about this in a previous episode about like how they weren't quite on that same level when he went to jail, and I know that from a personal thing. Again, watch that episode if you want the full details of the behind the scenes of that whole situation. But it was a time when people just believed that YouTube weren't for free speech. Now obviously this was during like the Biden administration, and YouTube fundamentally is an American company, like, you know, they weren't in the UK or anything, and a lot of free speech laws, especially when it came to the vaccines and people questioning the vaccines, questioning lockdowns, things like that, were getting just a bit insane, you know, like they were really cracking down on free speech and silencing people. It wasn't quite as bad as what we're seeing now with people getting arrested for social media posts and words and things like Lucy Connelly, who we will talk about in a minute as well. But it was a time where, yeah, people were really scared and concerned for their channels, especially if they were political. And I remember that Maya also struggled a lot with algorithm changes around this time as well that were really punishing his channel. I mean, it's funny now to see where he is, being a, like his YouTube thing at the moment says like 111 million. It's absolutely incredible. Like it's it's wow. In fact, I think I said that number wrong. It's like what, 1,011,000, isn't it? It's like I mean, it is insane to think that back then he was on like what, maybe 400,000 subscribers or something like that, I think, around that time, and to think where he is now is just insane. I mean, I said this in my short that I made when like literally the day of him hitting 1 million, being like, mate, I'm so proud of you, this is insane. And I said this to him personally as well, just how incredibly proud I am of how much he's grown his channel and the movement. And you know, I'll be going to the new media conference that he's hosting in August as well, so if any of you are subscribers who are going to that, say hi. Yeah, it was just a time where back then people were really scared about their channels, because it did seem like anyone on the right of politics and anyone political was getting their channels sort of silenced a little bit, or sort of pushed down and pushed to the back, and people really were struggling because a lot of people were obviously making their living from YouTube. So having it be threatened in this way was obviously, it is going to be scary for anybody. You know, if you have your job and your livelihood all of a sudden become a little bit more unstable, it's obviously going to be really scary. So yeah, a lot of people were thinking, okay, how do I fix this? And Alex was, I think, the first person to do this, but he created his own independent website and to be kind of his own platform of free speech. And Maya tried to follow suit, and I remember warning him at the time. I was like, mate, don't do this. This is not going to be good for your channel. This is not going to be good for just your community in general. And I remember, I mean, obviously he didn't listen to me because he has had a phase in the past of having an independent platform, obviously pre 2CTV Plus days, which of course is doing incredibly well. Again, so proud of what he's been able to build. But back then, I guess it was just more experimental, and yeah, obviously it didn't work the same way and I knew it wouldn't, but it didn't really work for Alex either. I think it worked a little bit better because people were so passionate about him, because he was funny and because he just gained, like, I guess it's just that psychological effect of like, if you make somebody laugh then they're gonna be more hooked on you, I guess. So it made sense that people were like, yeah, I'll go pay a subscription to see all your videos and things. And it was just a very rocky time for Alex, and he really just said, he just kept hammering home like, you know, they're trying to silence me, I can't be on YouTube, I have to be over on alexbelfield.com, you know, things like that. And this was also when the legal things started to pick up a little bit, and I'm sure we all remember, if we were fans of his at the time, you know, it was a time where, yeah, his legal situation was starting to pick up a bit. You know, he was getting those police raids and things like that. I'm sure we all remember the police raids, illegally raided by Nottingham police. I think, was it like, what, 3 times they raided his house illegally? So, you know, obviously it was a big thing for him. Obviously his legal fees were starting to rack up, and I guess that's another reason why he felt that he just needed that support. And obviously the live tours and the merchandise and things were probably helping him. But we'll get to this in a second, because this is kind of where, I guess, if anyone in the past was maybe calling him a grifter, maybe this is where it was coming up. Now, I didn't really see this the case at the time. I don't think I signed up for alexbelfield.com. I don't think I did, because it's just not something I necessarily support. I mean, at least at the time, I'm a subscriber of 2CTV Plus, like 100%, because I support what that is, because that's separate to the YouTube, and Maya's been able to just build 2 things very, very successfully. And again, insanely proud of you, mate. But with Alex, as I say, it was very much an escape. It very much felt like he was being pushed off, and he really wanted people to go over there. And he was also known for his phone-ins as well. style, which was very, I guess, reminiscent of when he was on BBC Radio Leeds, and he was really missing that side of things, like the direct interaction with his fans. And I guess he was getting a little bit of that at the live shows, but the phone-ins, I used to watch the phone-ins like quite regularly, and I'm sure other people can relate. They were very chaotic. They were very chaotic, and some of the people he would phone up, like, he would end up literally having like arguments with people over the phone. Like, he just never really let people speak properly. I think he was alright in the beginning, but then as it got up to when he was sent down, yeah, he was just not really listening to people very well, and it just felt a little bit disconnected. I remember it feeling at the time like, mate, these are your fans, like, let them speak, you know what I mean? Like, it was because they were trying to talk about, you know, being sacked for not getting vaccinated, or, you know, really distressing things, and he was very much an advocate for, give me your address, give me your details, we'll send you some money, we'll sort you out, blah blah blah. And that was another thing, that he was very passionate about supporting people financially and getting people out of like bad situations, because he had all this money, I guess, from, and it was a bit of a sort of a question of, Alex, where are you getting all this money from? I mean, I guess a lot of it was coming from alexbelfield.com, maybe, I don't know. This is just a guess, but it was very, very interesting to see how this kind of, again, went downhill, because, yeah, it started out, like, really good and really supportive and a really positive time with, like, a lot of laughs, and then, yeah, towards the end, as things got stressful with court and things like that, again, towards him actually getting sent down, again, he was just kind of arguing with people, he wasn't really letting them speak properly, and it just became quite chaotic, really. And I just remember thinking that at the time, like, mate, I'm not really enjoying the way you're speaking to people on the phone here. Like, this is, it was just a very, and I get, like, that obviously when it comes to, when you're in this sort of space of politics, people, you're gonna get weirdos, you're gonna get people who are gonna be abusing the time, they don't really know what they're talking about, there's gonna be trolls, obviously, and, you know, and it's gonna be a lot of people being like, well, that's not why you called, you know what I mean? So, obviously that is inevitable, right? But again, you have to handle it quite delicately, and Alex, I think there was a lot of anger, frustration and stress, I think, that was being projected through the phone-ins, and it was visible. It was visible because, you know, he was under a lot of pressure, and again, that was understandable, because there were a lot of, like, allegations and things coming out, and people, I guess, trying to take him down, which obviously they successfully did for 2.9 years, you know, he was in prison. But yeah, I just remember that being just a very strange time to be a fan of his, and trying to keep up with the court case and keeping up with what he was saying, and it was very chaotic. I mean, yeah, he was like releasing court documents and transcripts and things on alexbelfield.com, and he was just saying, like, you know, go over there for all the exclusives, you know, I'm having my day in court, like, I'm trying to expose the mainstream, I'm trying to expose the establishment. And in the end, as we know, he abandoned all of his legal team. He just ended up with no real support when he got his day in court. He was on his own. He decided to represent himself, because in his previous court hearings he'd had lawyers with him, and then all of a sudden he decided they weren't good enough, and he thought he was better on his own, and he was going to get his own back on the BBC and all these journalists that were claiming that he was stalking. And I just remember that being very, very bizarre, and at this point I remember just feeling like my support for him was wavering massively. Like, I just felt uneasy with his content and just kind of watching who he was becoming as a person. And yeah, I just remember when he did get sent down, a lot of the tweets and things and the messages were resurfacing from the evidence, because obviously everything was being shown. I just remember thinking to myself, damn, mate, you've got a problem. Like, maybe a little bit of time away would probably do you some good, just to kind of reflect a little bit and have a bit of a break from the world and a break from these people, I guess. And obviously that's what happened. He got sent down, 5.5 years, served 2.9, and now he's out. And the reaction has been fascinating. I mean, I have been waiting with bated breath to see what his reaction was going to be, what his first words were going to be outside prison, what kind of, the way he was going to come back to the internet, but just the world in general, but like obviously especially like his YouTube channel, and seeing what he was going to do with the whole kind of media side of things of what he was doing, and again just the comedy and the tours and everything. Now if you've been keeping up, and I did do a couple of shorts about this as well, when Tarquin, who I guess is like his assistant and also probably friend, who, I'm not gonna lie, those videos that he was making talking about Alex and his books and his tour and everything were quite funny. I remember being like, oh my god, we know what Tarquin sounds like now, because obviously it was always like, up a bit Tarquin, you know what I mean? It was part of the jokes with, you know, his producer, friend, cameraman, you know, person who would travel with him everywhere. And yeah, it was really interesting just to get those updates. And obviously I was getting other updates from people like Katie Hopkins, who were obviously going to visit him, being a really quite close friend to him. And you know, jokes aside, like, it actually was very sweet and important that Katie Hopkins was going to visit him in prison, because he obviously needed that, as anybody would, you know, in those situations, being shut down for words, I guess, which is obviously what he's been saying and what he was. Like, you know, he was sent down for online stalking. It wasn't like in-person stalking, it was online stalking, so it was words, I guess. But yeah, she was giving us updates, because obviously everyone was asking, like, is he okay? Like, is Alex okay? Like, please give us an update on Alex. And yeah, she was giving those updates. And good on Katie for that, because obviously she was one of the main ones that kept him going whilst he was in there. And you know, and obviously now he's out, and well, obviously he says that he's the one who gave her a platform, because she was cancelled for so long, wasn't able to do anything, especially in this country. So he was the one who kind of gave her the opportunity and that platform to start talking again, and to start performing and just being her. And you know, to be fair, I don't really watch Katie Hopkins religiously, but the stuff that I have watched, I'm like, you know what, girl, you're actually pretty funny. So yeah, I'm just glad that we were getting those updates off Katie Hopkins. But yeah, the big day finally arrived, where yeah, he was released from prison, and we got the little, it took him a while for him to actually like get on YouTube and actually talk properly, I guess, which makes sense. But I was just like, what's he gonna say? What's he gonna come out with? Is he gonna be promoting the website again? Like, what happened with the tours? Because the one thing that was really emphasized was the 6 books that he'd written in prison. When I first heard that figure, I was like, 6? Seriously? God damn, my guy, this is you've been a busy boy. And a lot of the things are like, one's about like his autobiography, obviously my own worst enema, which is incredible, which I just was like, of course all the titles are going to be so Alex Belfield, it's insane. So that was that. And then there's got another one about surviving prison. There's a few about his life in prison, apparently. There's another one about basically COVID times and getting shut up for talking about the vaccines. That's going to be another one. And I guess the rest of them are just about his life in prison. And apparently one's going to be like how to survive if you get called up for free speech stuff, and like, you know, if you get called up for social media things, and things he's learned about the legal system, and I guess from some of the police officers who helped him in prison, I guess, who actually supported him, which is very interesting, I will not lie. But yeah, it was just all stuff like that. But yeah, the book element, I'm like, yikes. And there's a couple of allegations that a few fans have kind of, I guess former fans have kind of pointed out about maybe he didn't write them, and maybe he kind of got like ghost writers to write them. But then he's been talking about, you know, the fact that he, like, everything had to be checked if it was going in and out of the prison, which makes sense, you know, things like the letters he was getting and the book drafts that he was sending out, like and the replies to the letters that he was sending out, and then obviously the book drafts and things. There was 2 police officers apparently, not police officers, prison officers who were assigned to checking his mailbag and things like that. And it was really impressive on his first video back to see just the amount of letters and cards and things that he'd received in prison, because he'd kept all of it, and his whole garden was just filled with all these letters. And yeah, it is very impressive, and to be honest, it was quite sweet to see that, and to see, you know, like the Christmas cards he'd got and the Valentine's cards that he'd got. By the way, what happened to the current Mrs. Belfield that he had well, when he got sent down. Like I imagine that probably broke down. He didn't mention her in the comeback video, so I'm guessing that relationship broke up. But yeah, it reminded me of that when I was watching the video. I was like, hang on, you had a girlfriend when you got sent down. You were thanking the current Mrs. Belfield in 2022. Where's she at? You know, bless him. Anyway, but yeah, it was actually quite sort of heartwarming in a way to see just how much support he had received in prison and the amount of cards and things that he'd got. And he'd claimed that he'd replied to all of them, which I guess is good in a way because it was occupying his time in prison. I'm sure that, you know, like when Tommy was in there, obviously we know that Tommy's situation prison-wise and when he was locked up was incredibly different to Alex's. But I guess that, you know, because obviously Tommy was getting some fan, obviously quite a lot of fan mail as well. And I wonder, I think he might have actually mentioned this. He probably has. I've probably just forgotten, but I'm pretty sure that he was probably doing the same thing. Like if someone had written him a letter to write back and all this stuff. But Alex was doing that religiously every single day because obviously he was in there for 2.9 years. And I guess it was good that he was doing that because, you know, it occupies his time, helps him feel sane. And obviously again, he was getting the visits of Katie Hopkins and his, you know, friends and family and things. And, you know, so he was definitely not alone in this, unlike, as I say, the treatment that Tommy got when he was in there was obviously complete isolation, and we've talked about that a lot when he was in prison. Obviously we talked about him now that he's out. But yeah, I guess with Alex, yeah, he was definitely not alone, and he was definitely not made to feel alone as well, despite being in like what 4 prisons he said that he was in overall in his time there, which is insane. And he kept getting moved because I think he said in the combat video that Katie Hopkins had been to visit him, and then after that, like, he got transported away for some bizarre reason. But yeah, obviously now he's out and he's talking about his 6 books and the tour, which apparently was that was another thing that was getting promoted as well, that this tour was all booked and busy, like, but then all of a sudden it was cancelled. And this is where the reactions come in, because I didn't know this until I started watching like a few videos of people just reacting to Alex Belfield coming out of prison, and, you know, the promotion of the website, which he has been doing quite heavily, saying like, you know, go subscribe to alexbelfield.com because that's where the books are going to be able to be ordered from, even though you can get it on like Kindle and Amazon, not just the website. But obviously he has now said that he's going to be coming back doing like the morning news and the phone-ins and everything. He's basically going to be like purely operating from alexbelfield.com, which has obviously warranted a few reactions from a few former fans saying he's back on the grift, he's grifting, this is all to get back the legal fees. And if you all remember, he did actually set up a way that you could donate to his legal fees and things, like the way you could help him financially, and he said that he was going to pay everyone back like every single penny when he got out of prison or something like that. You know, if I've got my facts wrong a little bit, you can please correct me in the comments, because I think that's what it was and the way he worded it, but I can't exactly remember. It was like 3 years ago now. But the one thing that everyone said is, where's the money, Alex? Where's the money? Are you gonna be paying back your fans? Like, you're gonna, you know, keep that promise to everyone who supported you financially, everyone who was kind of was there for you in terms of your bank account to get you supposedly through this, but obviously didn't because you ended up being banged up anyway. Like, where's all that? And I think that there is a point to be made, and as much as I necessarily agree that he's completely grifting? No. Do I believe it in a large capacity? Yeah. But do I think that it's probably necessary for him to gain back some money that he's lost, especially in like legal fees and stuff? Absolutely. I mean, yeah, the man has not been gaining an income, at least from his YouTube channel, because as soon as he got sent down, his YouTube channel got demonetized. So that's gone down the drain. I mean, I don't even know necessarily if his channel's been monetized again since. Someone's gonna have to let me know about that in the comments, but if it hasn't, then of course that's probably going to be the only way he's going to be able to make money, let's be honest. That and the books, which I'm sure will do fairly well. Probably not as well as if he'd come out with them, say, in 2021. So I'm definitely thinking, again, that a lot of this might just be a bit of a let's get some money back because I've lost a lot of money and I'm relying on my loyal fans that are still here, as much as some of these reactionary YouTube videos that I've been watching have basically been calling fans idiots for still paying in money and things like that, which I don't necessarily agree with necessarily. Like, I don't think people are necessarily idiots. Like, he brought a lot of people a lot of joy in lockdown, and I think people still want that joy and still want that hope and that faith. And obviously now we're in a very different era where it's not all about COVID anymore, which is good because bloody hell, let's all be glad that's over. But obviously we have a very, very different movement, and he did vaguely mention Tommy Robinson in a recent video as well. Obviously Katie Hopkins has been keeping him updated with what's been going on the outside, and you know, she's always said like, oh, he's still the same old Alex, like he's still joking around, he still wants to know what's going on, he still wants all the updates of things that have been happening, so she's been keeping him in the know. But obviously we're in a very different era now, and I'm not too sure how he's gonna survive. I will not lie, I've kind of half lost my train of thought here, so let me try and get it back. Yeah, so I think that people still want that joy even though we're in a very different era of life and there's a lot of different problems arising, but a lot of them still pertain to free speech, and especially free speech on social media. And obviously things have got a lot worse in terms of that since he's been in prison, and I'm sure, you know, obviously he's been made aware of all of this, and especially with his most recent video a few days ago, which he said he wasn't gonna make. But there's been reports that Lucy Connelly, who I'm sure we all know, got imprisoned for was it a tweet? Because some people say it's a tweet and some people say it's a Facebook post, so I'm not entirely sure, but I think it might, it's a tweet, it's something on social media, it's words, right? She was put in prison for words, she was put in prison for she's a free speech prisoner, right? Like, say it how it is. And she's in HMP, it's, oh god, what, what is it? Peterborough, HMP Peterborough, that's where she's in, and apparently she's been attacked. Now, I hate that. Obviously it's tragic, it's disgusting the fact that she's been attacked in there when pedos don't go down or manage to get suspended sentences, and she's in there for words, hurty words, as we all like to say. But yeah, the fact that people like Hugh Edwards can roam the streets freely and she's in there getting attacked, it's just, it is crazy, right? It is insane, and obviously we really need to rally behind. And Alex, his video that he made about her, is basically saying get in contact with her, you know, do it whichever way you can, you know, like basically bombard her with love and fan mail and encouragement, which I'm all about. I'm all like, hell yeah, let's go, you know, let's encourage these people who are going through a rough time. You know, he said like, you know, you being his fans and things, you know, you guys helped me get through jail with all of your love and support and the letters, and he showed all like the letters again in his garden, and he was like, yeah, you know, you guys saved my life with that, let's do the same for her. And he said, you know, you need to, he said like the website where you go to find a prisoner, and he was like, find her number, and he said like what his number was, and he was like, this is going to be similar. And I support that, you know, this was not on his private website, and this was on his YouTube channel, and the fact that he was saying this to everybody, you know, I'd support that. Again, it's going to be very interesting from a personal standpoint, because again, I'm not entirely sure where this is going to go. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Again, as I say, I don't necessarily agree with the allegations that he's a grifter to 100%. Do I agree with it at some point? Yes, but he has lost a lot of money, he hasn't really got an income, and I think he can still make a name for himself. Is he going to be quite as big as he was in 2021? No, because he just can't, right? That's just not, we're just in a different era, and he's not Tommy Robinson. Like, he's not going to be able to build up that same thing unless he kind of bands together and pledges allegiance. Although he has made a video since I filmed this episode where he said he's not going to be talking about Islam and war and things, and he's just going to be getting back to like the light-hearted stuff. So what I was saying here is true. With him or something, or whether he's able to team up with Katie Hopkins again, because obviously she's quite a fan of going to these rallies and things. She was at the Farmers one. I'm sure she's probably going to be at September the 13th, which again, as I mentioned in my last video, I don't know if I'm going to. I want to, ideally, but I am going to be in London for my O2C's new media conference a few weeks weeks prior. I do still currently work in retail, so I don't know, right? And getting to London even just for the New Media Conference, and just because I'm going to be there for the whole week for personal reasons and just stuff that I'm doing by myself as well. And I'm not going to be on my own for the whole time, don't worry you guys. But that is an expensive do. So, you know, I don't fully know if I'm going to be there, but I know that Katie will. And again, whether she can like rally Alex together to be part of that movement, I think that would be the best thing, because at the moment he has still got that chip on his shoulder about the mainstream media, about the BBC. He's apparently going to the police, and this is according to his latest video, he's going to the police and reporting people. He's like, they tried to take me down, but I'm back and I'm going to try and get him again, which I think is just going to land him in prison again. It's just, yeah, it's one of those things, and this is something that people were saying as well, the fans who were making the reaction videos, is like, he's just going to land himself in prison again, this is not going to be a good idea. People were saying that he was already breaking the terms of his license, which obviously he's been released on license, that's just, you know, part of his sentence, and there was some confusion about what he, like, what those were and what he couldn't say. And it was I watched the black belt barrister's breakdown video of like his license and his sentence and things, just for those people who needed the clarification, and he was saying, you know, because obviously as soon as he got out of prison, before he started making the YouTube videos, he was tweeting everything. He was like really doing his normal sort of styles of tweets and captions and things, where it was like full of emojis, full of capital letters, like very big gaps, like the paragraphs in between. Like he was definitely like, oh, he's back, and he's back with a vengeance, as I said in the intro, you know. But the black belt barrister basically broke it down and said, you know, he's not breaking the terms of his license. He's allowed to still be on YouTube. He's allowed to still make content. Like, the terms of his license are basically like, he can't go after the people, like the victims of stalking the first time around, that he's not allowed to contact them in any way. And it's apparently the same, he's not allowed to visit anybody in prison. He was saying this in the Lucy Connelly video. He was saying that, you know, I can't personally go and visit her because it's part of my license, I'll get sent down again, which is exactly what they want. Is, you know, what obviously that's what he's been saying, you know, like that's what they want. They want me sent down, but I'm not going to go be sent down. Like, I'm going to stay here and, you know, grift all I want. But again, as I say, I think some of that is necessary to gain back some form of income. So as I say, the direction that he's going in terms of just ramping up his hatred for the mainstream media again and just trying to go after those BBC loons, I don't think is the right way to do it. I really don't. I think he's just going to land himself in prison again. He's asking for trouble. He's asking for trouble, and I think that's where all like the grifting allegations, where I kind of agree a little bit, and like a little bit of like, maybe he's not the best individual that we all thought he was, because he's just got this one agenda and he just needs to drop it. And I don't know, something rubs me the wrong way about the fact that he's still on this agenda. Like, it's 2021 and 2022. Like, I get it, he's probably been thinking about this the whole time he was in prison, thinking, I'm gonna get him as soon as I get out of prison, and now that's what he's trying to do. But again, it's not 2021. There is a much bigger fight out there, and yeah, obviously the fight is still with the mainstream media. I'm not saying that it's not. We've talked about this before. This is why I started my channel. It's why I support people like Maya Tusi. It's why I go to the New Media Conference, and you know, it's something I'm really, really passionate about, is down with the mainstream media, down with the establishment. Yay for new media and unbiased, well, not unbiased, but like unfiltered, unregulated media, and just real people doing the journalism that the mainstream media is not doing, is something I'm really, really passionate about. Again, this is why I love this channel so much, and it's why I'm so excited that we've hit 900 subscribers. Woohoo. The road to 1,000 is so close. But yeah, in terms of Alex, as I say, that's the movement that he needs to join. That's the kind of way he needs to go, and I don't think that, as much as he says he's not going to fully abandon YouTube, but this is what he said last time, and you know, he ended up pretty much exclusively on his website. But again, I think the movement that he really needs to join is the new media movement, is the Tommy movement. And yeah, he's a supporter of Tommy, and you know, obviously that whole thing, and he always has been. Like, he's mentioned obviously the issues we're dealing with now back then, but back then again his emphasis was, I hate the BBC and these specific people, and also down with the vaccines. Like, that was his agenda. But now again, we've got a much bigger fight on our hands, and I just feel like he really needs to shut up about the main, like, shut up about his grudge against the people who sent him down, because, you know, he served his time, and in a way, him still harping on about them is just, all that's saying is, I haven't learnt my lesson, I'm going after the same people, and he's just going to end up with more allegations and more being sent down, and I just don't think it's a good idea. His talent and his comedy, because he does have talent in comedy, and he's a brilliant interviewer, and he's a brilliant comic, and an entertainer, and I really enjoyed that side of him, as I've mentioned, and I think that would really do well in this new movement, and I just wish that he'd drop what he's doing and actually just open his eyes to what he could be doing and the success that he could have, like everyone else is doing, because that's the main issue at the moment, instead of this personal vendetta. Like, he's got it all out in his 6 books, you know what I mean? Like, he can get it out on his tour where, you know, he's not online, you know, in person, where he can just speak his mind. And it's a shame that the tour's been postponed, I guess, and we're not entirely sure why. He keeps saying, like, you know, they're still trying to get me, all these people from the BBC and all these things, like, they're still trying, even though I'm back. And maybe that's true, you know, maybe that's true, but again, there's a much bigger fight now, and his talents, as I say, could be used so much better elsewhere. So I'm gonna finish off my makeup, I'm gonna do my lip off camera, because I can't really do my lip and talk, and then we're gonna come back with my final thoughts. Okay, look is complete. By the way, with my podcast, if you're ever curious, if any of the girlies, the women on here who are curious about the makeup side of things, if you want to know what I'm using, I always leave all the products that I've used in the description, so you can go and have a look if you've been curious about, like, what's that eyeshadow palette, what's that? Well, this is a limited edition palette from BYBEAUTYBAY, so you can't get this unless you go on eBay, unfortunately, but anything else like the eyeliner, mascara, whatever, in the description. But yeah, Alex, now I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on his YouTube channel, on any of the videos that he posts over there. I am not subscribing to alexbelfield.com. I spend enough on subscriptions. I'm not doing that, but I will keep a close eye on his YouTube channel. If anybody wants to be my little secret detective who is subscribed to the website and wants to leave any insights in the description, in the comments, sorry, feel free to do that. I am all ears. I will try and continue to talk about him, as well as, like, Tommy Robinson and these people who are in this space who we like to talk about. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. What are your thoughts on this whole mess? Okay, were you a fan of his in the past? Did you have similar thoughts to me when he went to prison, of like, this guy's a bit weird? Now he's back, you're getting the burst of nostalgia with all of the jokes, like, that's not why you called, things like that, you know, and all the impressions of the celebrities and things like that, with, oh, up a bit Tarquin, things like that. You know, like, are you enjoying the blast of nostalgia? Are you gonna continue to watch his videos? Are you still a supporter of him, like die hard? I want to know all of your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a bit of a discussion about this. Do you think he's a grifter? Have that conversation. Again, do I think he is? Kind of, yes. Do I think part of it is a necessity? Also, yes, to replenish his bank accounts a little bit. But yeah, let's have a great old big discussion in the comments as always. If you like this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my future episodes of the podcast. Make sure to leave this a like as well, because that really helps with the algorithm. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, hope you're doing well, and yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.